Okay, this meeting is being recorded. We got a few important reminders. This meeting is open to the public via the web or over the phone. Board members only will appear on the screen, while all public attendees will be on audio. Everyone is normally muted except when given the floor to speak. All members of the public may provide comment to the board on each agenda item, and during public comment, when the agenda item is up, the board president will ask for public comment on that item. The computer controls will allow you to raise your hand. To raise your hand, look for the raise hand icon on the Zoom window. If you're going to be calling in, go ahead and to ask for public comment, you dial *9, and then I will allow you to come in and make comment. Once again, the meeting is being recorded and will be posted to our website at a later date. We suggest you click the gallery view so you'll see the board members on the screen at the same time. And it basically looks like a grid. If there's any other questions or at this time, feel free to ask.
Oh, I see Brandy. Let me bring Brandy in. Hold on. Okay, Brandy is coming in.
Lori, would you proceed with roll call, please?
Okay, let's start. David Lasher? Is he here? I have absent. Brandy Grace?
Brandy, can you unmute yourself?
Yeah, it just let me back in. I'm here.
Good evening, Brandy.
Okay. Becky Levesque?
Present.
Okay. Hassan Mamarian? I'm absent. Miran? I don't believe he's here either. Jason Hector?
Here.
Gabriel Conlian? Not here. Assad Al-Najjar?
Present.
Myself is present. And David Balin?
Present, we have quorum. At this time, I'd like to ask if we have any public officials. So
If we have any public officials, please raise your hand so that this way we identify you. Thank you.
Hi, David. This is Christina. Wondering if we could also make Charlene a panelist.
Yes.
Thank you.
So please bring Charlene in. And then last, we would like to turn this over to see if the public has any comments that's not previewed to the board at this time. So do you see any public comments?
No raised hands. If you have any, oh, I see one raised hand. Let me see who it is. Just a second, please. Maureen.
Please, Maureen, unmute yourself.
Maureen, can you please unmute yourself and
Go ahead.
she appears to have video, but no audio sign. Maureen, do you want to try to log in again or dial in? I don't see any audio. Or can you type in your question in the Q&A, please? Go ahead. Go ahead, Maureen.
Maureen, do you have a question?
She has video, but no audio, David.
Okay. We can always come back to Maureen after the presentation during public comment. I don't know if we can do that. You know, we'll just give her about another 30 more seconds and then we have to move on.
And I got a message from Mehran. He'll be joining us in 5 minutes.
That's okay.
Helen to go ahead, Helen, unmute yourself, please.
Hello, everybody.
Good evening, Helen.
Hi, how are you doing? I was just wondering, is this going to be just public comment for us and ask questions, or there's going to be question and answers?
So right
Are we
now,
gonna get-
we're just doing comment to the board that's not on the agenda.
No, I know, but I'm asking for later on because I can ask later. Are
Right.
we going to have question and answer, or just questions or public
No,
comments?
this is going to only, it's same thing on the agenda. It's going to be a presentation with public comment.
Okay, so no answers.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ellen. All right, Maureen, are you available? If not, we have to move on. Okay, let's go ahead and turn over, share the screen. Who's going to take it? Christina?
I'll share the screen. Just give me
Go
one
ahead.
second. Okay, can you see?
Mhm.
Okay, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for having Public Health here today to give a presentation on the Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Research Study Goals and Priorities document. So today, our presentation will consist of providing a little bit of background on the status of the health study, where we are in the process. And then we'll give a little bit of information on what exactly the health study goals and priorities document is. So we'll go over the purpose for this document, the public comment period that's currently underway. We'll also go over how the draft goals and priorities was created. After that, we'll give a brief content overview of the document itself, and also show you how you can access the document online and provide comments online. After that, we'll go over how comments will be used, the next steps for the health study goals and priorities, and then we'll provide you with a few additional informational resources. Okay, hopefully this is big enough, but this is a timeline overview, big picture overview of everything that's happened since 2015 when the blowout began at the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility. So before we kind of dive into the goals and priorities document and what that means and the purpose of it, I thought it'd be good just to give some background and situate everyone on this call as to where we are in this process. So is this, just wanted to know if this is kind of big enough for people to see.
Maybe try zooming in a little bit, Chris.
A little bit?
Yeah,
Okay.
you should.
Give me 1 second. Is that better?
Yeah, that's better.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so in 2015, as many of you know, the blowout began in October and lasted through to February of the following year in 2016. There was ongoing litigation through to 2018. And then since then, the funds for the public health, for the health research study were delegated to public health to administer the health study and to fund third-party researchers to actually conduct the research itself with the oversight of a scientific oversight committee body of experts. So as I said, the funds were delegated in the spring of 2019. And since then, there's been extensive community engagement in an effort to gain an in-depth understanding of community concerns and hopes for the health study. So engagement efforts include, for example, community open houses, the formation of a community advisory group to serve as representatives of their respective neighborhood councils and stakeholder groups. And there's been extensive engagement with this group through various subcommittees and with regular CAG meetings. There's also been a virtual town hall, which happened in September of 2020 to discuss and hear from residents about the Aliso Canyon disaster, how it impacted them and their families, and also to hear about them and their hopes for the upcoming health study. In addition, there's been updates provided at neighborhood councils meetings, and there's been 2 community opinion survey research initiatives to learn about the concerns and values of the communities impacted by this disaster and their hopes for the health study. The survey reports, both of them, are actually available now on the Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Research Study website. One of the reports consisted of a live telephone interview, an online survey, and that was of a representative sample of residents of communities from the neighborhoods closest to the Aliso Canyon facility. And the other report consists of results from an online version of the community opinion survey, which was open to anyone who wished to provide a response. So additionally, there have been engagement efforts, including social media posts, regular communications, electronic communications, and also keeping the media and elected officials apprised. So at the beginning of 2020 now, there was the formation of a scientific oversight committee. This is a body of renowned scientific experts that is providing oversight and guidance throughout all phases of the health study. This body of experts is composed of agency representatives, as well as independent experts in the fields of epidemiology, disaster behavioral health, mental health, toxicology, community-based research, exposure assessment, environmental health, air monitoring, and air modeling. And as mandated by the consent decree, the SOC is responsible for determining the specific goals for the health study. So throughout 2020, the SOC had a series of meetings during which they received an extensive amount of information about the impact of the disaster on the communities and on community concerns and hopes for the study, including a presentation from the community advisory group early on in their establishment. So with all of this information and their diverse expertise and extensive experience, the Scientific Oversight Committee drafted goals and priorities for the health study for public review. The goals and priorities for the health study will be finalized by the Scientific Oversight Committee after the public has the chance to review and provide comment during a 30-day public comment period, which is currently underway and ends on April 16th at 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So the SOC is also highly engaged in developing an RFP, which will solicit researchers to actually conduct and implement the health study. We're hoping to release the RFP in late spring or early summer of this year, and we're aiming to have contracts awarded by the end of this year or early next year. So this slide shows us kind of I guess, a simpler version of this timeline. So this is the 4-phase process that the health study is currently going through. So as I already discussed, the first phase was community engagement. So we are highly engaged with the community to learn about their concerns and their hopes for the health study. And also the Scientific Oversight Committee drafted the goals for the health study during that phase. So currently we're in the research solicitation phase of the health study, and this phase is focused on administering the competitive process of soliciting research proposals through the RFP, as previously mentioned. So this competitive solicitation process involves the request for proposal. The SOC is involved in developing key components of the request for proposal, including the goals and priorities which will be implemented. So after this research solicitation phase, where we solicit proposals from researchers, we award contracts, the actual research will begin. And this will primarily be involving the researchers themselves and implementing the research. And the research will be also overseen and guided by the Scientific Oversight Committee, and findings from the research will be communicated to the public. Lastly, there's an evaluation phase, and this is mandated by the consent decree as well. So after the 3rd year of the health study, the Scientific Oversight Committee will conduct an evaluation of the health study to determine whether it's on track to meeting the goals that the Scientific Oversight Committee established for this health study. And this evaluation will be conducted on an annual basis following that initial 3 years. So now that I've gone over a little bit about what the goals and priorities are and the purpose for this document, and also about the public comment period, I want to also kind of go over the document itself and show you how you can access this document online and provide your comments. This might be a little bit too big. So this is the Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Research Study webpage on the public health website. So you can go, you can find the information for the health study goals and priorities on this website, and we can send you the link after this presentation. It's also in the presentation slides as well. So if you go on this website and click on our updates banner, there's an update here about the draft health study goals and priorities. And if you click on submit your comments, you'll be taken to the actual goals and priorities themselves. So we'll just zoom in here a little bit. So the first few pages here is actually just a cover page to explain what exactly this document is, who created it, so the Scientific Oversight Committee, how they went about creating this document, and then also ways to submit your comments. So as mentioned, the deadline to get your comments in is Friday, April 16th at 5 p.m. So please be sure to do so if you haven't done so already. There's several ways you can submit your input. So either emailing your comments directly to us at alisostudy@ph.lacounty.gov. And then you can also provide your comments through an online form if you want a little bit more structure in terms of questions to answer. The online form might be for you, but if you prefer just to give kind of your own structure of feedback, you can submit an email to us just with your comments in that form. So if you want to submit an email as well, we created an instruction form also to provide a little bit of guidance. So the instruction form is linked in this document as well. So you can access it here. And then if you want more information on the health study, there's additional information linked here for you as well. So I'm going to go into the document itself and just give a brief overview of the content. So the first section here is just providing a little bit of background on the disaster that happened in 2015 and 16. And the impact it had on the community. So community members felt impacts right away as soon as the disaster started. So acute impacts such as nausea, abdominal discomfort, headaches, migraines, nosebleeds, shortness of breath, skin rashes. And this was experienced by community members both during the disaster and following the disaster. This background also provides a little bit of information on the response that followed the disaster. So SoCalGas was directed by the LA County Department of Public Health to expedite efforts to stop the blowout and also offer free relocation to residents affected by the odors. So 8,000 households were relocated during this time. And then SoCalGas was also directed to relocate schools to temporarily relocate affected students at schools within the affected communities. So this background also goes a little bit into the community assessment for public health emergency response that was conducted following the disaster, which found that residents were still experiencing those acute symptoms that they were experiencing while the blowout was happening. So that gave that gave us an indication that something needed to be done and looked into, because the symptoms were continuing despite the fact that the blowout had been stopped. So this document also briefly touches on the fact that even though this blowout may have expose individuals in the neighboring communities to contents from the well, there was also quite a bit of stress associated with that environmental disaster situation. So changes in your home, your social networks, your school, like all of these changes in the residents' lives can have a consequential impact on their health and can result in psychological distress as well. So just making note of that as well, because this is an important thing to take into account when conducting research on kind of the holistic view of how health can be impacted in situations like this. So the background also goes a little bit into the settlement that took place and also into the mandate for public health to kind of oversee the development and implementation of the study with the guidance of the Scientific Oversight Committee. And then it also goes a little bit into the existing scientific literature on the topics of exposure to oil and gas operations and the chemicals associated with that. And in addition to that, also research related to disasters and behavioral health resulting from disasters and situations like the one that the community experienced during the Aliso Canyon blowout. So all of this is important to take into account when researchers are thinking about how they can implement the study for this specific scenario. So the end of this just gets a little bit into other resources that people can look into if they're not familiar with what a health study actually is. So on our website, we've provided information on what is the health study. So there's a fact sheet and a video here for people who are interested in learning about what a health study actually entails. So next up, we have the goals that the Scientific Oversight Committee drafted for the Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Research Study. And in bold here is the overarching goal of the health study, which is to contribute to the understanding of the potential short and long-term physical, mental, community, and social health impacts of exposure to the Aliso Canyon disaster. And I just want to note that the Aliso Canyon disaster was defined by the Scientific Oversight Committee to include subsequent remediation efforts, ongoing and current operations at the facility, and regular activities, and disturbance to the community. So this is a pretty broad goal, and it captures the many facets of health that are important to consider when you're taking a holistic approach to understanding health impacts from a disaster. So specific goals for the health study are bulleted here. There's 3 of them. So the first one is to evaluate the relationship between exposures to air pollutants, chemicals, and other pollutants during and or following the disaster, and adverse health impacts of priority to the community, which could include, but is not limited to, physical and mental health. The second is to investigate the impacts of stressors. So just to be clear, stressors include non-chemical stressors such as changes in social networks and environments. So to investigate the impact of stressors related to the Aliso Canyon disaster on quality of life and functioning of residents impacted by in the impacted communities during and following the disaster. And finally, the last specific goal here is to include susceptible populations, such as children and older adults in the impacted communities. So in addition to studying the general population, also making sure to identify those populations that are susceptible to negative impacts from a disaster situation. So next, we're going to get into the health study priorities. This is broken out into a few different categories here as well. So I'll go through each of them briefly. And again, this is available on the website, so you can go through it with a fine-tooth comb once you have time and on your own time and provide your comments. But just making sure that everyone has an overview here so that they have an understanding of the context of this. So the priorities include study outcomes. So the Scientific Oversight Committee identified 3 time points for which there can be health impacts that they felt are important to consider. So the first is acute health impacts. So these happen on a shorter time frame. So these can include worsening pre-existing conditions experienced by residents in the communities affected by the Aliso Canyon disaster. They can include physical health symptoms, such as skin and mucous membrane irritations, migraines, and gastrointestinal and cardiovascular outcomes. They can also include emotional mental health symptoms, such as stress and possible psychological trauma. The intermediate term health impacts include birth outcomes such as preterm birth or reduced birth weight, and possible harms to the health of pregnant women and developing fetuses, and possible impacts to child development. Lastly, there's of course chronic health impacts, which is something that the community is indicating they're very concerned about. And these include cancers, lung disease, psychological and mental health conditions, harm to immune system function, just to name a few. And the community thus far has been identifying cancers and respiratory health as the outcomes of greatest concern. So the next section here kind of gets into other facets of health that are important to consider when conducting kind of a holistic study that incorporates other aspects of people's health. So one of them is social health. Another is behavioral health, and community resilience. These are all outlined here. And social health, so I'll just go through each of them briefly. So social health is the ability to interact and form meaningful relationships and to support the and support networks with others. So relationships that are nurturing and supportive are especially important during a disaster situation like the Aliso Canyon disaster, and from recovering from stressful and traumatic situations. So behavioral health gets into how behaviors are connected to health and well-being. So behaviors such as eating habits, substance use, and exercise, and how that can be impacted by a disaster situation, and how that ultimately impacts physical and mental health. Community health is more related to the health status and functioning of a community, kind of at a broader level here versus the independent or individual level. And this includes conditions and activities that promote, protect, and preserve health within a community. And then finally, community resilience is defined as the sustained ability of communities to withstand, adapt to, and recover from adversity. So all of these different facets of health are important to consider when studying the health impacts, the wide-ranging, far-reaching health impacts of a disaster situation. So the health and quality of life of people can be impacted through various levels. And this is what the next section here kind of gets into. So in addition to someone's health being impacted, for example, at their own individual level, say through their genetics, health can be impacted at various other levels. For example, the interpersonal level, the social networks and connections that people have, the community level, and also the societal level. So because of this, the Aliso Canyon disaster will prioritize a social ecological approach to the study of health and quality of life impacts from the Aliso Canyon disaster. And what this means is that it's going to incorporate all of those different levels of influence on health, and in a good kind of overview, a visual of what that looks like is the CDC social ecological model here, which outlines the various levels of influence on an individual's health. So next up is study populations for the health study priorities. The people and communities surrounding the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility were impacted by the Aliso Canyon disaster. And there are susceptible populations that can have a greater negative impact due to a disaster of this nature. So the community has expressed concerns in various populations, and as well as populations that have moved away since the disaster. So susceptible populations of concern to the community include, but are not limited to, older adults, children, newborns, pregnant women, homeless or low income individuals, minority groups, workers, and people with pre-existing conditions. And in addition to those previously mentioned populations, the community has routinely expressed concern about the health of their pets and animals. Next section gets into study exposures. So exposures are defined broadly here so that it encompasses chemicals released during the Aliso Canyon blowout and well control attempts, in addition to potential exposures to chemicals released as part of ongoing, current, and regular operations at the Aliso Canyon gas storage facility, and exposure to social and other stressors that arise from a disaster situation. So studying the combined effects of all of these stressors is identified here as considerable high priority for the impacted community. So again, there's several different exposures that can be studied. So first of all, chemical exposures. So this kind of goes into further detail about what chemical exposures can include. So in addition to chemicals released during the blowout and ongoing operations, and constituents of well control, muds and fluids that were used to actually stop the well blowout. It can also include concurrent exposure to multiple chemicals and their cumulative potential synergistic impact. And that last part there is of specific and in particular interest to the community. So not just studying the impact of one potential chemical exposure, but the combined impact of multiple chemicals and their exposures. And then again, the social and other stressors can be considered an exposure during a disaster. So as mentioned, these can include changes in home and school environments, social networks, socioeconomic status, activity level, and even stigmatization resulting from exposures within the community. The next section here gets into data sources and collection. So this kind of goes over the various different sources of data and how researchers can collect data to actually conduct the research. So it goes over the differences between primary data, secondary data, and also proxy measures. And it gets into here in terms of examples of each. So primary data refers to data gathered by researchers specifically for the research project. And researchers can use or develop their own data collection tools that are tailored to the research objectives so that the data that they collect can be directly used for the research itself. So primary data can include focus groups or interviews and participant observation and other research methods. And then secondary data gets into kind of the data that has been collected by government institutions or healthcare facilities, nonprofits, and other organizations as part of their record keeping. And this data may or may not be specific to the researcher's needs. So acceptable forms of secondary data that can be utilized, just to provide some examples, include potential health records, hospital and emergency department discharge data, poison control center data, surveillance and monitoring data. So that just gives you kind of an overview of what that can entail. And then finally here we get into measuring environmental exposures and health outcomes with the use of proxies. So for example, predicting ambient air pollution concentrations has been used in prior research to study the effects of air pollutants on an array of health outcomes, such as cardiovascular, respiratory, neurological, and cancer risk and overall mortality. So that just gets into another way in which exposure can be measured and data that can be collected for use within a health research study. Finally, we're getting into study types. So as part of the research solicitation process itself, the researchers are going to propose study types that are able to be responsive to the research solicitation and meet the goals and priorities of the health study as outlined here and in the final document once it's finalized by the Scientific Oversight Committee. So this bid process, as I mentioned before, is open to all researchers who are interested in submitting a proposal, which we're hoping to release in the late spring or early summer of this year. And then there's just some references here. So that's an overview of the health study goals and priorities. I know that's a lot of information, but you're welcome to, and we encourage you to go over this in your own time and let us know what you think about it, what you feel is important to you in terms of the goals for this health study, and whether you feel like what is being identified in this document kind of highlights what your hopes are for this health study. So we are really encouraging anyone who's interested in the Aliso Canyon Disaster Health Research Study to provide your comments again, either through emailing us or going to the online form that's been put together and submitting your comments within the online form. And the deadline again is Friday, April 16th at 5 p.m. to submit your comments. So make sure you do so before then.
So at this time, Chris, are we looking to take public comment or at this time?
Are we getting up to that point in the agenda?
No, I don't know where I didn't know where you were. I was quiet, so I don't know who's next or where we're at. So that's my question to you.
Okay, I have a few more slides to go through, and then I think then we'll pass it off to you for a public comment. Does that sound good?
You'll let me know. I'm already getting hands up for public comment. I didn't want to step over, so please proceed. Thank you. Sorry about that.
Okay, I'm sure there's a lot of comments there, so I'll try to be quick and go through the rest of these slides.
You've got the floor. Take your time. Thank you.
Okay. So this next slide here goes over what we've been doing to really promote this opportunity to the public to provide their comments. So we've been, as of today, we've received over 250 online submissions already, which we're really thrilled about. And we're hoping that we can continue to get submissions through to the end of the deadline. So really excited about this. And what we've been doing to promote this opportunity includes press releases, news banners, digital banners on Public Health's main webpage. So if you type in Los Angeles County Department of Public Health, their main page has a banner on there that links people to the Goals and Priorities document. There are Facebook ads that are up and directing people to our page. We've provided a monthly newsletter with links to the goals and priorities. We're sending out e-blast reminders. You'll be getting another reminder within a few days. And then we've been providing neighborhood council updates, and also we've been asking the community advisory group and neighborhood councils to promote the opportunity as well. So again, we're really excited about the online submissions that we've gotten so far. We're seeing a larger representation of people from Porter Ranch, which is expected since Porter Ranch was the neighborhood that was closest to this disaster when it happened. So we're happy to see that. So again, this is just a reminder that you should submit your comments if you would like by Friday, April 16th by 5 p.m. So I also want to spend a little bit of time just talking about how your comments will be used and next steps for this goals and priorities document. So the health study goals and priorities identify key areas of interest to the community for the health study and the key areas that should be addressed by the research. So your comments that are received will be provided to the Scientific Oversight Committee to review, and your comments will inform the Scientific Oversight Committee when they're finalizing the goals and priorities for this health study. And in turn, that will inform the Scientific Oversight Committee on the development of the research solicitation that will go out at the end of this spring or early summer. So again, please provide your comments either by emailing us or submitting them through the online form, which you can access on our website. Lastly, I just wanted to kind of run through a few informational resources in case you're interested in learning more about this health study and the stakeholders who are involved, our timeline. So what's listed here is the Scientific Oversight Committee webpage. So on this webpage on our website, you can find information about the role of the Scientific Oversight Committee, the composition of this body of experts, their bios as well. So please be sure to check that out. As mentioned earlier, we have a What is a Health Study video and fact sheet. So if you want to learn more about what a health study entails, please be sure to check that out. You can access that on our website and at this link provided here. I mentioned this a little bit earlier in the presentation, but there's also community opinion surveys that were conducted last year, and the results are now up on our website. So please be sure to check those out. These surveys were conducted to get a better sense of the concerns and hopes from the community for this health study. So those results are very informative, and we invite you and encourage you to look through those surveys and the results, which you can access on our website. Also recently updated on our website is a FAQ page. So if you're interested in learning or having answers to commonly asked questions that we hear from the community, and also other informational resources that you may find helpful, please visit our FAQ page. That page will be updated regularly as well, based on the feedback that we get from our community with regards to this health study and concerns and hopes for this health study. So please be sure to check that out as well. And with that, I guess I'll pass it back off to David for the public comment.
Thank you for your presentation. So just to remind the public and our board members, at this time, we're only taking comment. We're not going to be asking. Will be no Q&A. So at this time, I'll go ahead and start asking comments. Assad, you have a comment?
Yes. Thank you, Christina, for all this information and for bringing us to speed. It's a good draft. However, from my perspective, and this is the comment I'll be emailing you, but I would like to give you like a head start on it. This feels like a draft 0.0. And it's a good guideline, which is probably would have been good 4 or 5 years ago, but not at this stage. And I'm hoping and appealing to you guys that whatever comments you have and all that, before you go to the SOC, at least get another draft going on for comments. Now, and if you go to page 4, the evaluation relationship for the exposure to air pollutants, I think that should be separated. One for whatever was going out of the blowout, and another section standalone of what chemicals was used for the failed couple attempts until it was done. So it should be separated because each item should be treated differently. Then when you get to page 5, I feel that social health, behavioral health, community health, and especially community resilience should have been each on issue. It's each on objectives and goals and should have given more magnitude than it is. I mean, I'm the Porter Ranch Neighborhood Council Resilience Liaison with the city of LA. And from this perspective, there is a lot that had taken place that should be accounted for in the timelines. And when you get to the study exposure, you touch on the well controlling attempts, but that's where I feel you're lacking to elaborate more and have it as a strong item. And let's see. And then when you go to page 7, you get to the primary data, secondary data, but we don't get into, again, the timeline. And I'll stop here so that I give time to my colleagues at the board, and hopefully we see a second draft. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Assad. Brandy, please give comment. And
Thank you,
Gabriel,
David.
you'll be next.
I second Assad's thing. So what I wanted to comment on is I'm hearing concerns in the community over this study's data sources. I'm a computer scientist, so we have a saying, garbage in, garbage out, which means if the computer model uses bad or inaccurate data, it'll lead to bad and inaccurate results. So specifically, the concerns I'm hearing are that the study may rely too heavily on disputed air monitoring data rather than actual patient data. And in the interest of maintaining public trust, my comment is to request that DPH please include language in the study recs requiring that the study's data be primarily reliant on direct patient data, be it physiological, neurological, psychological, et cetera, rather than historical environmental data. And thank you so much for coming and speaking to us.
Thank you, Brandy. Gabriel, please unmute, give comment.
Yes, thank you for coming today. I just want to make a comment real quick. I think that the subsequent goals and priorities and the RFP should be seen by the PRNC and public before it's final. Is that going to be possible? I know you can't answer questions, but if you can make that happen, that'll be great. We can't
Thank
hear
you, Gabriel. Hassan, please unmute.
I'm sorry. Would you like me to respond?
It's up to you.
Okay. Yeah, I'm happy to respond to that. So we'd love to make the public comments that we're getting available to the public. We just need to get confirmation that we can do that. In terms of the RFP, it's just the nature of the process where we have to ensure that all proposers get all information at the same time. To ensure that it's a fair and equal process. So we're not able to make contents of the RFP public before the RFP is actually released.
Thank you.
My apology. Hassan, please unmute yourself.
Good evening. Chris, thank you so much for the presentation. the comment I wanted to make pretty much echoes what Asad mentioned. I listened to the presentation, and unfortunately, I can't just walk away not saying that the fact, I think this is becoming a research 101. You really need to expedite this, and in order to do that, I think we need to really streamline this research study. I feel like it's going way too fundamental. We pretty much as a community know most of the issues and perhaps some of the sources of this. So please, if you could get together with your colleagues, and maybe we have to move on to version 102 in order to get this going. So thank you so much, and appreciate all the time you're spending on this.
Son, thank you very much. Miran, please unmute yourself.
Miran. Sorry, Miran. I'm not sure if it's just on my end, but the audio sounds as if there's a filter. Your audio sounds like there's a filter. I'm not sure. It sounds like almost like a cartoon a little bit.
Like Mickey Mouse, yeah.
Like, yeah, it sounds, there might be a setting you might want to look. I don't know, I'm sorry.
Yeah. Miran, you want to log off and log in again, and please, and I'll look for you.
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
Oh, now you sound good. Now you
sound okay.
Okay, all right, thank you. I just wanted to say that I agree with Asad, and we really need to have another draft, which is the key opponent in every health study, and we need to separate the chemical because that is actually the main factor to know what is happening. Brandy, she mentioned about the data. Yes, indeed, we need to have more data. This will also ensure transparency and public input incorporated. I echo with the civil engineer, Mr. Hassan, that we need more defined objectives so we can better understand the outcome of this health study. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Do we have any attendees that would like to make comment?
Mr. President, there is a comment in the Q&A by Maureen.
Okay, very good. Maureen, I'm going to go ahead and read this for you. It says, I'm so disappointed in the health department and the SOC. Listen to the people that lived through this. What happened to Katie Butler? Things have changed and not for the good. Listen to the CAG, they represent the people. Thank you for your comment. Okay. On that note, I don't think there's what we have.
That is Patty and Julie.
Perfect. I know Julie had her hand up earlier, so Julie, always welcome. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thanks a lot. Oh boy, there's just so much frustration over this. I'm sorry, your names aren't, well, let me see. Oh, it's Chris, right? Chris, you were giving the report. It's a lovely report. It sounds like somebody who's getting a master's degree or maybe a doctor's degree, but it's our lives, it's we're living it and have been living it. So, all right, the question is, you mentioned it's going to be about a 3-year study, but you might need more years than that. Is that correct? Did you say that? I mean, I'm so startled when I hear 3 years, and then because we will be at 8 years, over 8 years by then. Okay, what did you say? Can you clarify that?
Yeah, sure, I'm happy to clarify. So it really depends on the proposals that we receive and the type of research that's conducted. So some studies are prospective and they last 3 years or more. So for example, the Gulf study that's, I believe, still being conducted following the Gulf disaster, the oil spill that happened in the Gulf of Mexico. So that's been happening for over 10 years. I'm not sure if we're going to get proposals of that nature. We're probably going to get proposals with all various different studies being proposed, and some may last just a few years, some may last more. So it really just depends on the proposals that we receive and their response to the solicitation we put out. But in terms of what I mentioned earlier about the 3 years, so that's in relation to an evaluation that the Scientific Oversight Committee is going to conduct at the end of the 3rd year of the health study. So that evaluation is going to look into whether the study that, or the research that is being conducted, whether it's actually on track to meeting the goals that the health study put in place for the health study. So that's just kind of an explanation as to why I mentioned 3 years.
David, am I still on, David?
You are.
I'm still on, okay.
So Julie, just in hindsight, we're really trying to focus on comments unless Chris wants to give answers. Thank you.
You did say that. I will make my final comment here. It's not my final one, but I'll make it anyhow. I guess my concern is that not only do we not note to this date what the impact was, I don't know, Dave, from one day to the next, if there are leaks at the gas company site and how it's impacting our lives. And it's hard to wait 3, 4, 5, 6 years from now because we do not know what's happening daily. Thank you.
Thank you, Julie. Patty, I'm gonna go ahead and unmute you, Patty.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great, thanks. The best source of data for this health study will come from our bodies. Longitudinal physical examinations, CBC blood work, toxicology tests are a must. I have a problem with many of the sources of secondary data listed in your statement. First, doctor and emergency records. Dr. Ragan's March 2016 directive made many doctors not list Aliso as a possible cause of symptoms. And I know I'm not the only patient who had a doctor refuse to go there with my respiratory problem. Also, the Casper survey in 2016 was conducted when many of the most affected weren't back home. Some agencies like the OEHHA used data by Salchow gas to conclude there weren't any levels of concern, and that first community survey last fall was geographically flawed and may give any research team the wrong impression about how the community feels about impacts from Aliso, just as all these other secondary sources will not give any research team the right information. It has to be about what happened in our bodies, and that's about physical and examinations and clinical study that's over the 3-year or 5-year or whatever period, periodical tests of our bodies and blood work. So again, there's so many problems with this goals and priority, and I think it was written by someone who really doesn't have a clue about what our community went through and what is a proper health study. It's not a risk assessment study, it's a health study, and it has to be about our bodies. So thank you.
Thank you very much. Helen, please unmute yourself.
Yes, I wanted to say first and foremost, this study needs to be human-based study. Nothing else is going to be accepted by this community. And another thing that, you were telling us that, you feel like it's too much information and we are overwhelmed and it's too much to absorb. I just want to let you know that you didn't say anything new that, we don't know. And this doesn't even touch 1/50th of how much we know. And it's surprising that, that the information you're giving us, you think is too much when you don't know anything about, or a little bit about what we went through. If you need to, you can come to the community. The residents will educate you to what we went through and what we are going through and how much we know. And another thing is that for the survey, you were so excited and overwhelmed with the 250 response that you had. But you were saying that Department of Health relocated 8,000 households. And we know we have over 30,000 people who have lawsuits. And we know that a lot of people in the community do not have lawsuits or they were relocated. So we're talking about almost 1.5 million people in San Fernando Valley. And you get excited over 250 response. That's a shame. That is a shame that you're satisfied with that many response. And even if you double that, still, you guys need to try to reach out the community, the residents. And we know you know how to do it because we have seen you on TV for this COVID, and we know that you know how to do it. You just don't want to do it. That's another thing. And please, I want to have a meeting before the deadline that we would have some answers, a meeting that we could have questions and somebody would answer us, not just public comment. This is not going to satisfy us. We have so many questions. We have been asking for over 5 years. We haven't even gotten one answer to any of those questions. This is not fair. This is not how it's done. If you really want to get the community's trust to participate or go forward with this, you need to have a meeting soon, like tomorrow, next week, soon before the deadline, and come and answer some question. And please send somebody more experience. I don't want to insult you, Christine. I'm sorry. I know this is not fair to you because they have put you in front of this community and they're hiding behind you. Where are all those people, original people? They need to come and answer some questions to this community. Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. Andrew, please unmute yourself.
Yes, can everyone hear me?
Yes.
Great, thank you, David. I'm going to make 2 comments. They'll be very quick. The first is, it is absolutely imperative that a revised draft, a D2 of the goals and priorities is put out to the public. This cannot be a one and done. And I think you've heard that now from multiple people in the community as well as from multiple board members. The second is, I cannot wait for the CAG presentation here in a little bit. I cannot wait to be able to give the stakeholders facts, meet, take questions, provide answers. That is what, as you can hear, the community is begging for. Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Maureen, please unmute yourself. Maureen. Maybe she'll come back. Brian Allen, please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, David and PRNC. I'll try to keep this short. The first comment I have is the background section of this. And I know these words might be very challenging, but it's a whitewash. And it's a whitewash in that the statements that are made in the background are factually incorrect. There's assumptions made there, and there is a lack of detail to explain what happened, whether that was intentional or just simply they didn't know better. I don't know. The other a very large point here is the term susceptible groups. Now, I'm not a doctor and I'm not a PhD, but I know the difference between the term susceptible groups and just simply human beings. And the statement that's made in susceptible groups is just identifying human beings, men, women, children. It doesn't identify cancer patients. It doesn't identify COVID patients. It doesn't identify any condition, which is what a susceptible group is. So it's embarrassing. If I was to show this to somebody who is knowledgeable in the field, they would laugh at me because it is, and I think DPH, including Barbara and everybody else in DPH, should be very embarrassed that this document is out in the public, making a statement about susceptible groups and not identifying them. It's just wrong. And no one should accept comments like that as being real or honest. And I have many more problems, but I'll stop there.
Thank you, Brian. John T, I was just about to read your question, but I'm going to go unmute you. So please, John, speak.
Sure, thanks. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. Yeah. Hey, this is John T. I'll just read it. I just wanted to make sure I can read it for you. So yeah, I'll just read what I wrote and I'll make it quick. Yeah, this is John Tebow. The health study as written is too general. It needs to be specific. It needs to be patient body specific. I'm actually very glad to hear that most of the comments tonight, and especially the comments from the members of the board that spoke, think that this proposal sounds very basic, that it's only sounds like a first draft that could have been written 5 years ago, and that this draft is not good enough at all. I was extremely happy to hear that tonight. So once again, I am very, very glad to hear that most everyone that spoke think this draft is not good at all. So thank you very much. I look forward to hearing what the CAG has to say. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Isam, please unmute yourself.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Thank you. Chris, if you don't mind, it would be good to get a little bit of a clarification, whether now or later, on the mechanics of the process of the scope of work development. I read the goals and objectives, and I do see what you're trying to do. You're trying to cast a wide net and get proposals that the SOC will evaluate and decide which one serves the objectives that they have in mind. And that's great, but I would like to understand, will the SOC actually develop a scope of work, or is the extent of the SOC's involvement is in the review of the proposals after the issuance of the RFP? If you can comment on that. And then the second is, it is always good to have a timeline that defines the milestones of public participation. So please, in defining a timeline, help us all understand in each of these steps, when will there be a public participation, whether when you issue the RFP, when you receive proposals, after you select a proposal. Give us a roadmap that identifies these milestones so we can have them in our planning effort. But there are other comments, but I'll stop at this for now. Thank you.
Thank you, Isam. Dieter, please unmute yourself.
Hi, my name is Deirdre Bologna, resident of the community, and I am requesting that Department of Public Health please confirm and include specific language in the GMP that requires the health study to be patient-centered. The community wants patient-centered, not a computer model. We live through it. Our bodies are full of chemicals. We don't want to find out what's coming for our children. We want to stop it now by finding out what's going on and what we've been exposed to. So the health study has to be patient-centered, requiring physical exams and not using the flawed CCT data. And my second request is, the community would also like a meeting, because I know time is always a restraint here, to have a meeting with questions and answers, because I've asked multiple questions at many Department of Public Health meetings that have never been answered. And they say, oh yes, we're gonna get back and come back to you about that. No one's come back. So please, a meeting with the community for to answer questions with enough time allowed. Thank you so much.
Well, Chris, I think unless I see any other hands. Oh, Let me see, there was one more question. Oh, Mary Blair has a comment. I'd like to share it. It says, the others issue about the proposal and what agency can apply for the actual health study. Is DPH going to be candid with the public, and there is a restriction on what entities can apply to conduct the health study? As CAG, we are told it is not an open RFP process. There are DPH restrictions on who can apply to conduct the health study. Will this information be made available to the public? And this is a policy that can negatively affect the health study. So that's a comment. All right. And on that note, Chris, I'll turn it back over to you if you have any final comments.
Yeah, sure. No, all of these comments are really helpful. And I hear you all. And I really appreciate you all coming to this presentation, hearing about this opportunity, providing your insight. You know, the community members are the ones, like you said, who know how this disaster impacted you, impacted your families, impacted your loved ones, and your friends. So I think it's so important to hear from you. And that's why I really want to encourage all of you to submit your comments on the goals and priorities. I know I said that I got excited for 205 responses. I'm hoping that we can get many more than that. You know, there are a lot more people within the communities that were impacted. So again, just very much encouraging everyone who's interested in this effort to please go on and provide your comments. They will be reviewed. They will be provided to the Scientific Oversight Committee and will inform them as they're developing this RFP. And in terms of that last comment, I just wanted to note that the RFP is open to all researchers who are interested in submitting proposals. It's not restricted by any means. The only restriction is that Scientific Oversight Committee members themselves cannot submit a proposal. So that other than that, any interested researchers can. So just wanted to clarify that. And once again, just thank you so much for having me come today and provide this information. We're going to take your comments that you submit online or through email seriously and provide them to the Scientific Oversight Committee. And I hope that, you know, this effort can continue to be guided by the community. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Chris. And on that note, board, I'm going to move on to our item number 8. I know we moved through them all quickly. So I'm going to take any and all board comments at this time before we conclude this part of the meeting. Assad? Well, you know what, Assad, Lori beat you. So Lori,
it's okay.
please.
Yeah, ladies first.
I just want to say again, thanks, Chris, for being here. You know, most of us were here during the gas leak as board members as well. And I have health issues myself. And, you know, when I see, like the other person made the comment about, I think it was Brian Allen, who made the comment about, you know, susceptible groups. I am one of those susceptible groups with an autoimmune disorder. I don't know if I got the autoimmune disorder because of the gas leak. I got it, or because the existence of Aliso Canyon. I got the diagnosed long before the actual gas leak. But who's to say that wasn't part of that? The other concern I have is it's maybe difficult if the gas is still leaking. I think Patty mentioned this. If the gas is still leaking today and intermittently or all the time, or we don't know. The air monitor seems to go off very often, right when we think there's a gas leak. Personally, I've had headaches for the last 3 or 4 days. You know, who's to say it's not related to that? I don't know. And that's very frustrating. And I think that's what the community is saying to you. They're frustrated because we want to know now what is being, what we're being affected. And I love my house. I really don't want to have to move. You know, and it's just one of those things where I'm really concerned about my future health. I don't know what is being affected now versus what is going to be affected in the future, and you know what maybe my long-term life expectancy could be. So it's scary, and we've had lost a lot of friends to this. Like you, I'm glad you at least mentioned the social aspect. No one comes to my house anymore. Right around the time the gas leak happened, I had family members who are pregnant and babies that they've had since. They won't come here, and they still won't come here. So you know, we've really, you know, of course with COVID now, of course nobody is visiting, but even prior to the COVID I want to make that clear, even prior to COVID, you know, they refused to come here after the gas leak. So it's very, very concerning to us. I appreciate the work you're trying to get done, but we need to see more. Thank you.
Thank you, Lori. Assad, please unmute yourself.
Yes, thank you. Again, thank you, Christine, and everybody for the presentation. My comment is, I mean, I'll be submitting a lot of my comments to the DPH, and I read the document over a dozen times, and I have a lot of remarks. I encourage my colleagues in the board and, of course, the community to send all the comments. However, my request to you, Mr. President, to consider that if we don't have time for another meeting to have a one solid PRNC response, maybe we at least have a attachment of each board member, what their comments are, as submitted as one package without any liability to the neighborhood council. Time is of the essence. We have only 10 days to go or something, but it's something, if my colleagues would like, we submit all of them as one package, or they can send it individually. One way or another, we have to voice all these comments from engineering perspective, from health perspective, from community perspective, as a whole package, so that this health study means something, protect us and protect our children and hopefully grandchildren. Thank you.
Thank you, Assad. Brandy Grace, please unmute yourself.
Thank you. Also, David, so you know, in the attendees list, Jason Hector's in there, and he raised his hand. So,
thank you. I got him right here.
Cool. So, you know, again, thank you for all of this. I think an important point that I would like to bring up, since we have representatives from DPH, is that, you know, even in the study, it was commented about the incredibly important aspect of researching potential chemical exposure that we may have suffered as a community. And I think it should be pointed out that this neighborhood council, along with many others in the area, have officially requested that Los Angeles subpoena a list of chemicals that our community may have been exposed to during the blowout and since. And we would dearly love for DPH to come out and support our request and go forward with subpoenaing SoCal Gas for a complete list of all the chemicals and chemical compounds that our community has been exposed to, because it will better inform this health study, if for no other reason. So that's my comment. Thank you.
Great comment, Brandy. Thank you. Jason Hector, unmute yourself. Did you have a comment?
Yeah, I did have a comment. It was mentioned in there that the community advisory group's input was, I don't know the exact wording, but it was considered. I think it would be helpful if you be specific. So what was it? Give some examples. I know this is, you know, I mean, it'd be nice to get answers to a question. This is a question, so it's not a comment. And the question would be, what specifically did the CAG input? Because I know the CAG is working very hard, and I'm just wondering exactly what you got from them that was incorporated, because I believe that's in your document you presented. You said something specifically about input from the CAG being used in formulating, I guess, this proposal.
So Jason, I hate to do this to you, but we're just doing board comments before we conclude the meeting. So are you gonna, and then your board comment, are you asking her to reconsider that?
That was what my, it's a question. I mean, I'm sorry, it's a question. That's all I have.
Okay, so I'm sure they'll consider that when they're maybe when they do their second draft. Thank you. I think, let's see, do we have, hands up? Let me see, panelists, one moment. Miran?
Chris, I have one simple question to you. Very importantly, we need the chemical list.
Miran, board comments. Focus. Board comments. We're concluding the meeting. Board comments. Thank you.
What is board comment?
Do you have a comment to be made before we conclude the meeting?
Yeah, I'm asking about the chemical list.
We're not talking about a question, so make a comment on it, please.
Oh, okay.
Thank you.
Go ahead, speak.
I'm, okay. So I'm asking about the list because if we cannot define clear objective and body harm, what will be next?
So would your comment be that you hope that the DPH will add the list of chemicals?
Correct.
Thank you. Okay, I think that's all of our comments, Chris. At this time, I see one question before I conclude our meeting here. This is from, well, we've already gone by that, so sorry, Deidre, we board comments. At this time, we don't have any more board comments. Anything else you'd like to conclude with, Chris? Are you good?
Can you hear me now? Sorry.
I can hear you now. We're just about to conclude. I didn't know if you had any final words for the community before we move on.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate that I really appreciate hearing from all of you today. Your comments are very helpful. And again, please do submit them either through email or through the Google form. And please let your community members and friends and family know about this opportunity because it will really inform, the finalization of the goals for the health study and also it will inform the Scientific Oversight Committee when they're developing the scope of work for this RFP. So your comments are valued. And I do, along with everyone else who's working on the Aliso project, very much encourage you to submit your comments. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much again for everyone who showed up to this meeting and to hear the information I had to provide. And thank you again for having us. I really appreciate this opportunity.
Thank you very much. And at this time, board, we are going to call the first meeting. We will take a break and we will begin the next meeting at 7:45. Thank you.
Meeting adjourned.
Meeting adjourned.
Yeah. You forgot it, Mr. President. And you need to click the recording off, please.
I'm getting there. Thank you, everybody.
Mr. President, this is the minute taker.
Yes.
I was found out about all these good things happening today, like when I got home.
Yes.
And so could someone please explain to me or call me and let me know what is this second meeting? I don't know anything about it and I don't have an agenda.
Give me the direct number to call you.
310. I don't want to give that out with everybody's listening.
Okay,
yeah, turn the recording off.
Yeah. It's on the website. She can just go to prnc.org and it's on there.